There is a difference between a man who insults you and a man who is begging you, without knowing it, to confirm what he has always feared about himself. The second kind doesn't come in looking angry. He doesn't come in loud. He comes in quiet. He comes in dressed well. He comes in with his collar pressed and his hands folded and a smile that is the kind of smile a man gives when he has already decided how this is going to go, before a single word has been spoken, before anybody has done anything to him. He has already decided. The priest who walked onto my stage that morning was the second kind, and by the time I understood what I was really looking at, I had already made the most important decision of that hour. I have been a black man in America for 67 years. I have been on television for more than 4 decades. I have watched every version of what a man can become when he has lived long enough to stop pretending. I have watched the ones who grow into something bigger, and I have watched the ones who shrink into something smaller and dress it up in authority so nobody notices the shrinking. I have seen them wearing suits. I have seen them wearing badges. I have seen them wearing pulpits. But this one was different. Not louder. Not cruder. Different in a way I want to be very careful to explain to you. Because if I describe it wrong, you will miss the part that matters most. Today I am going to tell you 3 things. I am going to tell you who that man was, and what he said about my mother on live television. I am going to tell you what 40 seconds of silence actually sounds like inside a room of 200 people when nobody knows what to do. And I am going to tell you the 6 words I said to him, and what happened in that room the moment the last word left my mouth. Stay with me. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on the notification bell, because what I did not say to that man is the part of this story that the internet never got right. And if you have ever watched somebody use God's name to do the devil's work, you are going to want to hear every single word of what happened next. Subscribe, then come right back. It was a Tuesday in early November in Atlanta. Marcus had been with me for 11 years. Stage manager. The kind of man who has seen everything in a decade of live television and is still surprised by almost none of it. He does not scare easily. He does not come to me with small things. When Marcus walked into my dressing room at 9:47 that morning and didn't sit down, I knew. He said, "The gentleman in Bay 3. Father Thomas Albright. He asked me twice if there was somebody he could speak to with actual authority over the production. He asked one of the producers where you were born. And when the makeup artist introduced herself, he called her sweetheart and asked her if she was sure she was in the right building. I told Marcus I heard him. Marcus said, he asked if your mother was going to be in the audience today. I told Marcus to keep an eye on Bay 3. Father Thomas Albright arrived that morning in a black town car, the kind that gets ordered by an institution rather than a person. He was 71 years old, 6 feet tall, white hair parted on the left the way men of a certain generation part it, as if the part itself is a form of authority. A black clerical shirt with the white collar and over it a charcoal gray jacket, hand-stitched at the lapels. The kind that costs more than most people's monthly rent. A watch on his left wrist that he rolled between his thumb and forefinger when he was standing still, not fidgeting, measuring like he was calibrating something nobody else could see. He was polite. Sober, hands folded the whole time he waited. Not arrogant. Worse than arrogant. Certain. The kind of certain that doesn't need anybody's approval because it has never once, in 71 years, been asked to earn it. My mother, Steve Harvey, was 78 years old that morning, She had agreed to come on the show as a surprise guest for our family history special. She had driven up from Cleveland. She was wearing a green dress she had bought specifically for the occasion, and she had her good pearls on, and her hair was done, and when she walked into the green room, she looked like exactly what she was. A woman who had raised her children right and arrived early and was not going to make a fuss about any of it. Her chin was tucked just slightly. Her eyes moved around the room before she sat down, the way eyes move when they have spent a long time in rooms where being careful was the difference between a good day and a bad one. She was sitting very still. The kind of still that isn't peace. The kind that's practice. Something was already wrong. I could feel it the way you feel weather coming before the sky changes. I told myself what we all tell ourselves when we see something we don't want to deal with. It's one segment. Stay professional. Don't go inventing tragedy where there isn't any. Lord, forgive me. I let it go. For the first part of that taping, my mother was magnificent. We ran a segment where family members answer questions about each other's history. And my mother, this woman who grew up in Welch, West Virginia, in a house with no indoor plumbing until she was 9 years old, who put herself through community college working the night shift at a laundry, who raised 3 children mostly alone after my father passed. This woman knew every answer before the buzzer finished ringing. Quick as a flash, sharp as a tack. The crowd started cheering. A real cheer, not a prompted one. The kind that starts in the chest and gets out before people know they're doing it. For those few precious minutes, I watched something beautiful happen. I watched that caution melt right off her face. You could see it at the corners of her eyes, that little crinkle people get when they are truly smiling, not performing a smile, truly carrying one. For the first time since she walked into that studio, my mother looked like she was breathing. I was so proud of her I almost forgot there was a camera pointed at me. Father Albright was seated 3 feet to her right, and he was watching all of this with an expression I would only understand later. He was not smiling at her answers. He was smiling at the crowd's reaction to her answers. He was watching who the room belonged to. And every time the crowd cheered, his thumb went back to that watch. It started small. The way these things always start. Between segments, during a setup adjustment, Father Albright leaned slightly toward my mother and said something I could not hear from where I was standing. My mother's expression did not change. But her hands moved. She set them flat on her thighs, the way you set your hands down when you are deciding not to use them for something. I noticed. I did not act. The second moment was visible to the front 3 rows of the audience. We had moved to a round where I read facts about each guest's life. I read the card about my mother, born in Welch, West Virginia, 1946. Father Albright, before I could even finish the sentence, leaned back and said loudly enough for the nearest cameras to catch it, "I didn't know they had schools down there back then." A laugh. Short, aimed at nobody in particular. The kind of laugh that sounds like something dropped on a hard floor. 2 people in the front row exchanged a look. The audience didn't know what to do with it. They held it. The way you hold something in your mouth that you aren't sure whether to swallow. I kept going. He misspoke. He's nervous. Let it move. Lord, forgive me. I let it go twice. Before I tell you what happened next, and I am going to tell you, I am not going to make you wait. I want you to do one small thing for me. Drop one word in the comments below right now. Just one word. Tell me what you would have done in that moment. Drop the word, then keep watching. Because the answer I gave that man was not the one I had practiced, and it is the only part of this story I have never told on television. The third moment happened 11 minutes into the second segment. I was standing at the host's mark, 2 feet from the contestant podium, and Father Albright turned in his seat, turned fully, so that his body was facing my mother and not the camera. And he said, in a voice that was not quiet and was not meant to be, "You must be very proud of your son, considering where you people come from." Dead silence. Not the silence of an audience waiting for a punchline. The kind of silence where you can hear the lights humming in the rig overhead. The kind where 200 people remember at the same instant that they have lungs and discover that drawing air suddenly requires a decision. My mother did not flinch. She sat very still. That practiced stillness I had seen in the green room. The stillness of a woman who had been in this moment before. Not this exact room, not this exact man, but this moment. She had been in this moment most of her life. In the third row, a woman I had never seen before reached over and held the hand of the woman sitting next to her. My floor director, Carl, 24 years in television, a man I have watched absorb chaos without blinking, took the lanyard from around his neck, set it carefully on the edge of the equipment cart, and walked off the floor. Did not look back. Did not say a word. Just walked. My mother's hands were still flat on her thighs. That was the moment I understood what I was looking at. 40 seconds. I have watched the tape since. I know the count. 40 seconds from the moment his voice stopped until the moment I moved. That is a long time on live television. You could fill 40 seconds with a lot of things. The first thing that moved through me was the comedian. I have been doing this for more than 40 years. I have a drawer full of sentences that could turn a man into ash on a public stage. I had 3 of them in my mouth before he finished speaking. The audience would have applauded. The clip would have run for a month. I would have gotten the kind of revenge that is satisfying in the moment and corrosive for the rest of your life. I did not reach for those sentences. I did not raise my voice. I did not point. I did not perform for the room. The second thing that moved through me was my father. Broderick Harvey Sr. came home every night for 28 years smelling like the Ford plant and iron shavings. He did not lecture. He lived. But when I was 9 years old, sitting at the kitchen table one evening, he looked up from his dinner and said something I have carried for 58 years. He said, "Son, when a man tries to make you feel like less than what you are, the worst thing you can do is fight him the way he wants to be fought. Because then he gets to tell the story. And he always tells it the same way." The third thing I saw was my mother's hands, flat on her thighs, perfectly still. She had been keeping her hands still in rooms like that one since before I was born, since Welch, West Virginia, since the laundry at 2 in the morning, since all of it. She had been asked her whole life to sit still and absorb things that were not hers to absorb. And she had done it. Because she was raising somebody. She was raising the man who is now standing on this stage. I looked at her hands. And I made a decision. I set my microphone down on the podium. Not dropped it. Set it. The way you set something down when you are completely finished with it. I walked toward Father Albright, slowly, every step deliberate. Not running. Not storming. Walking the way my father used to walk into a room when a conversation needed to be had, like the floor under him was solid and had always been solid and always would be. I stopped 5 feet from where he was seated, close enough that nobody in the room had any doubt about who I was speaking to. Far enough that I was not in his space, not crowding him, just present. I looked at him for 3 seconds, not performing. Just looking at a man. And then I said 6 words. Not here. Not her. Not today. I did not raise my voice. I did not point a finger. I did not ask him to respond. I did not wait to see whether he would. I set the moment down the way I had set the microphone down, completely, without ceremony. Then I turned away from him. I walked to where my mother was sitting, and I got low. I did not stand over her. I got down to her level, one knee on the studio floor, so that when she looked at me, she was not looking up. We were eye to eye. I took both her hands in mine. I spoke to her in a voice that was quiet enough that I thought the microphone might not catch it. It did. I said, "You are safe. Nothing is going to happen to you in this room. I give you my word." You hear me? My word. My mother looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "I know, baby. I know." The room was silent for 2 more seconds. Then it was not silent. 200 people rose to their feet. Not for the show. Not for me. They were on their feet for a 78-year-old woman in a green dress and her good pearls who had driven up from Cleveland and deserved, on this one Tuesday morning, to be treated with the dignity she had been carrying her entire life without anyone ever stopping to confirm that she had it. If you are still with me, share this video right now with one person who needs to hear that how you respond to cruelty says more about you than the cruelty ever said. One share. Then come right back. Because what happened in that parking garage is the part of this story that no camera ever caught. The show did not continue that afternoon. We broke for the day. Father Albright left through the front. Security walked him, not dramatically, calmly, just present in the way that makes a direction clear. I watched him go from the stage. He was holding his jacket over his arm. The watch was still on his wrist. He did not look back. My mother and I sat in my dressing room for a while. She ate the sandwich craft services had left out. She asked me whether the segment would still air. I told her I didn't know yet. She said, "Well, I hope they use the first part. I did well on those questions." She did. She did do well. At 4:15 that afternoon, one of my producers knocked on the door and told me there was someone in the parking garage asking to speak to me. Father Albright. I went. He was standing beside the town car, both hands at his sides, not measuring anything. The driver was sitting inside with the engine off. Father Albright looked older in the parking garage than he had on the stage. Not smaller. Older, the way certain kinds of certainty look when the room it was performing for is gone. He did not apologize right away. I am not going to tell you he did. Because he didn't. He stood there for a moment and looked at the floor. Then he looked at me. And he said, "I don't know why I said it like that." I said, "I think you do." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "My congregation has been shrinking for 11 years, 300 families down to 40. The neighborhood changed. I told myself a lot of things about why. I did not crash that man's career. I want you to hear me say that clearly." I said 6 words on a stage and went back to my mother. What happened to Father Albright's standing in his diocese after that Tuesday, the conversations that were had, the reassignments that followed, I played no part in any of it. I said 6 words. That is all. 2 months later, a letter arrived at my production office. White envelope. Printed return address. Inside, on a single piece of paper, in the handwriting of a man taught penmanship in a classroom that doesn't exist anymore, deliberate, slightly tilted, the kind you do not see much anymore, were 11 sentences. I will not read all of them to you. But the last one said, "I was not raised to speak that way to anyone." Somewhere I stopped asking myself when that changed. My mother never saw that letter. I thought about showing it to her. I decided against it. She had already done enough carrying. She did not need to carry his accounting too. She is still in Cleveland. She still has the green dress. She told me recently she might wear it again for Easter. I hope she does. So let me ask you the same question I started with. There is a difference between a man who insults you and a man who is begging you without knowing it to confirm what he has always feared about himself. You have met this person. Maybe not on a television stage. Maybe at a family dinner. Maybe in a church pew. Maybe in a boardroom or a classroom or a doctor's office. You have sat in a room with someone whose certainty is a costume over something much smaller. And you have had to decide in that moment what kind of person you are going to be. Here is what I know. There are people in your life right now who have been sitting with their hands flat on their thighs for a long time, not because they are weak, because they have been carrying something heavy and they are practiced at holding it without dropping it. They are sitting next to you in the pew. They are standing behind you in line at the pharmacy. They have been smiling at you at Thanksgiving for 20 years, and you have never asked them what they are holding under that smile. Don't be the person who almost helped. Ask the question. Trust the feeling in your gut that says something is not right here. Because that feeling, that quiet, inconvenient, persistent feeling, it is almost never wrong. And the moment you act on it, the moment you set down the microphone and walk across the room, you change what the room is. You change what the room is. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that dignity is not something a man can give you or take away from you, only confirm that you already have, do 3 things before you leave. Subscribe to this channel, because stories like this one deserve to be heard by more people than the algorithm decided to show them to. Share this video with one person in your life who needs to hear that 6 words spoken quietly can be louder than anything said at full volume. And drop a heart in the comments below for Steve Harvey. A woman who drove up from Cleveland in a green dress and her good pearls and handled herself with more grace than most of us will ever have to call on. She is not alone. She never was. God bless Steve Harvey. God bless every mother who has ever held her hands still so her children could build something better. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I'll see you in the next one.